Hi there, my name's Jim. This is my shed and you're welcome to it. And welcome to another belated episode of Jim's Shed. Got there at last. This big lump under a cover here, given what we've been working on lately, I'm sure you can figure out what that is. Finally got on with engine stuff, or building anyway. You can see a few bits in the background, so it's all done. So yeah, we're showing you getting the bottom end together. And I would like to take this opportunity to admit that I'm very happy to be proved wrong. Start of this year, I did a bit of a whinge about the government consultation about registration of classic cars and classification of modifications and that sort of thing. And it turns out, it appears they've made it easier, which is a real turn up for the book. So, as I say, very happy to admit when I'm wrong. I was wrong about that. My cynicism was very much misplaced, and yeah, looks like they've made it easier. So maybe when this old girl gets done, I'll be able to register it properly and not just get it MOT'd and hope for the best. So good stuff. Yeah, I guess having said all that, I'll just say let's finally crack on. So exciting times. My engine bits are all pretty much done, so we can start putting the engine together. It's great. The block, I mentioned before that I was pretty sure the block was in perfectly good nick. The bores, well, I won't say the bores. The top's been ground, and originally I wasn't really that fussed about facing the top of the block, but luckily we did, because it took about 4th hour to clean it up. It was not flat at all, and that worried me a little bit, thinking the bores might be out, but they were absolutely perfect. They needed just a couple of tenths with a hone, and they all cleaned up lovely. So the bores perfect. And so on top of that, we got everything degreased and oil pumped, everything. You can see all the bits are nice and clean. Rods and pistons. Got the crank balanced, so we balanced the crank. The flywheel. And the clutch cover separately. So it's all marked up, all done, so that's ready to go in. And all that remains really is to paint the block. I know some people really go to town and mask everything off and then spray it and all that. I don't do that. I'm just going to use Smooth Right blue, sort of match the the engine bay theme, such as it is. So yeah, just degrease the outside, slap a coat of this on it. So there we go. Right, so that's the block all painted. Now I've just got to give it a good clean and put the crank and stuff in. I'm not going to put it on the engine stand until I've got the crank in, basically, just because lack of space. Once it's on the engine stand, it's going to be sat here and it's going to be difficult, so it's easy just to flip it. I'll clean it all off, flip it upside down, put the oil squirters crank while it's on the bench, and then once that's all pretty much done and the flywheel's on, then I'll bolt the engine stand to it and put it on the engine stand to get the header on and that sort of thing. So I'll just get on with cleaning it off. I have to say, this has spent hours in a cleaning tank, been blown out mercilessly, and you can see there's still clouds of rust coming out of it. This engine, I don't think it's ever had any antifreeze in it. I think someone just filled it up with water. So much rust coming out the waterways. And like to remember me saying, I need to check each squirter in turn, so I haven't degreased them. I just need to blow through them to make sure that they're still going to flow. So good. Yep. Yep. Lovely. So I'm glad all that oil is out of them. Lovely stuff. But they're all flying, so I'll just give them a quick clean off and chuck them in. I'm just using standard fixing hardware on the main studs, main caps, because A, they're 11s and they're 10.9, so a reasonable bolt. But if you try and increase the clamping over standard, you have to get the block line honed because you will distort the main housings. So can't go any tighter than standard, so I'm just going to fit a set of standard main cap bolts. And I will say, lubricated, always lubricated. Beautiful. Okay, now I'm just going to pull apart the oil pump, have a look at it, make sure that it's all okay. So oil pump's apart, and basically all we're looking for with the oil pump is wear on any of these parts, and there's none on this one. And you know, you can mess about measuring the end float and all that, but basically if there's no wear there, which there is, like, you know, there might be a thou, but there's not going to be, you know, that's going to be good as gold. So basically all I need to do now it's all clean is pack the well, oil this bit, because obviously I've cleaned it, there's not going to be any oil in there, so I need to get some oil in there. Pack the rotors with graphogen so that make sure that when it starts up it'll suck nice and quickly. In the good old days I would have put a spring behind the pressure relief valve just to up the oil pressure a bit, but that's a bit old hat now. Don't really need to do that. I've got no reason to think the standard oil pressure is insufficient. So as I say, just lube everything up with graphogen, bit of oil in there, and put it back together. So I'll do that now. Just checking the oil, the ring gaps. So first one I'm going to check is the oil control. So square it up in the bore using a piston with a ring on it. If you just use a piston without a ring on it, you can still, there's still a lot of slot, but you can have a big change of angle. So you need a ring, and then you just use that to square everything up, make sure you're nice and square when you're measuring. Now the ring, oil control ring, it's often quoted as a minimum gap of 15 thou. So I will just get my 15 thou feeler gauge. There you go, 15 thou, look at that, bang on. So I would say that was perfect. Now on to the others. Second ring, you want a gap somewhere around the 7 thou per inch of bore, so just over 3-inch bore like this. I guess 20, something like a 22 thou gap would be ideal. And there's a 20. Let's see, just check that goes in. Well, that's pretty much bang on 20, which might actually be a little bit tight, so I might need to open that up just a couple of thou. Now once you've filed the ring gaps, you need to deburr the edges, because any edges on here obviously will pick up on the pistons, and definitely any burrs here will scratch your bores and damage the bores. So you need to deburr. Some people use an oil stone for this. I just use a needle file, and you just very gently take the edge off, okay? As with any tool, you can mess this up. You just literally drag the needle file across the edge and take the edge off, and then you can feel all the burrs are gone, perfect. You haven't put a massive chamfer on, you've just taken edges off, and that's all perfect. That can go in. Okay, so I'm not telling you how to do it, how not to do it. I'm just telling you how I do it, and you know, everyone's got their own preference, but tools are just to be used. If you use them wrong, you'll fuck it up. So don't use them wrong. And having filed it and deburred it, I'm coming back to check. So I've got my 22 thou feeler gauge, and absolutely perfect. Look at that. Just a nice bit of drag on it as it goes in. Perfect. So that's that one done. And the same for the top ring. And again, absolutely perfect. Lovely. Now ring spacing, 120 degrees apart. So on this ring, it's a 2-piece oil, so it's not the 3-piece, the 2 rings in the expander. It's actual cast bottom ring. So I generally, just because I don't know why I just started doing it, but you know, just for convention, for my own peace of mind, I put the oil compression ring, oil control ring, I should say, ring gap next to the pin boss, and then I put the other two 120 degrees, somewhere around about there, and somewhere around about there. You can get too hung up on this, because when the engine's actually running, the rings do rotate, and they don't all rotate at the same speed, so at some points they'll line up, some points they won't, but just, I don't know, just give yourself the best chance. 120 degrees apart, that's how I do it. And the ring compressor I use, some people swear at them, I swear by it. Again, just like the needle files, it's a tool. If you mess it up, then that's on you. I've never had a problem with them. Good as gold. So all these fancy, you know, bore-specific ring compressors and all that people use. Admittedly, yes, when you put them in place, you can just throw the piston at the bore. Excuse me. You can just throw the piston at the bore and it will go in, but they're bore-specific, so you need one for every single bore size you're doing, which is not. Careful you don't trap any rings, tighten it up. And then, how do we get this in? Let's have a look. That better? Bit of oil. There you go. So here we are. Oil pump's on, front and rear covers are on. Quite amusingly, this relates, this front oil seal was sold as a PTFE type seal, and the instructions that came with it absolutely said no oil, has to be put in dry, and then you can't disturb the crank. Once it's in, you can't move anything for 4 hours, and that did not seem right. I'm used to packing everything with grease to within an inch of its life to stop things picking up, but follow the instructions. So there it is, and in. Had to trust on that one. So now we're going to make, so I can button this up. Oh, and by the way, I know I haven't put it on the engine stand. It's just because there just isn't room. I got the stand out, put it together here, and it's just no room. So I'm going to have to build a thing on the bench. You know, it's, well, what can I say? I haven't really got a choice. I'd rather use a stand, but I can't. So this is fine. So right, I'm going to get the sump on, so the bottom end's all buttoned up. And the last thing I've got to do is make the baffle plate that's going to sit here. Well, I did really want to have it all the way around with a hole for the oil pump to sit, but obviously that was when I was visualizing it in my head. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm not going to be able to do quite that. I'm just going to have a lip. And of course some weird microphone issue popped up and the audio stopped recording. So here I am just describing the shape of baffle that I can actually fit in place, which, as I mentioned, wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but I'll now skip forward to when I start cutting out my template with a bit of CAD. There it is, roughly in place. Does need a bit of finishing here. I'll make some bits to fill in. I'll fill in that gap and I'll fill in that gap with other plates. But basic shape in, so tidy it up. Stick it in place and see if the sump fits. So I managed to find some blue tack in the house that my kids haven't. And the microphone woes strike again. So I'm just saying I found some blue tack so I can stick the baffle in place while I plop the sump on temporarily and see if it fits. Success. Although what this doesn't show is when I pull the sump off, the blue tack fell off and I had to fish 4 lumps of blue tack out of the block. Oops. So here's the sump with the plate welded in. You can see I've welded around the outside, leaving gaps so that any cracks which have a tendency to develop in alley plates, they crack along the edge of the welds like this. So I've done as much as I can, but leaving gaps that it's not one continuous weld. And I've also done the turbo oil return. That's in there. So give that a blow off and chuck it on the bottom end, and then that's that buttoned up. So there you go, that's it, bottom end all together. Very exciting. Next steps, I'm struggling with the logistics of everything, to be honest, because obviously years gone by when I had my garage with a nice concrete floor and my engine hoist and all that, I could have just built it up, picked it up, put it on the floor, put the gearbox on, wheeled it over the car, dropped into the hole, nice and easy. But given that none of that is possible now, I've really got to be a bit more clever about how much I build up on the bench and how much weight I can deal with. If I put the head on and get everything done, then I've got to get down on the floor and then somehow get it outside without wrecking everything. So yeah, I've got to think about things. It'll all come together, obviously, but it's not just as straightforward as it certainly was in the past. Things I skimmed over a little bit on the engine build. I said about lubricating nuts and bolts. I use this ARP assembly lube. You get a little sachet like this with every set of ARP bolts you get, and you never use the whole thing. Well, you shouldn't use the whole thing on each one. That would be just like downing it. Plus, they give you enough of V8s and all that. So you just end up with loads left over. So I've got loads of sachets of that. So I just use that as an assembly lube because it's very good stuff, nice and consistent, and better than using engine oil or anything like that. The block face is a ground finish. Now, in years gone by, we used to like a nice, we call it a gasket gripper, so quite a coarse skimmed finish on heads to really grip into the composite gaskets. But what with metal shim stuff and different technology, you don't need to do that anymore. You just want a nice, smooth, flat surface. So that's exactly what this has got. So all lovely. The ring gaps I quoted, they're just sort of rule of thumb for a turbo motor. You want, people say 7th thou for a top ring. I go a bit smaller than that. Sort of, I aim for more like 6 on the top ring. Then you want slightly bigger on the second, so 7th thou. That's per inch of bore, sorry, I should say, on the second. So I've set this to about 22 thou on the second ring and 20 thou on the top ring, which should be fine. Might even be a bit on the cautious side, but yeah, all done. So I can get the head on. The head looks lovely, I have to say. Dean at CTM did an absolutely lovely job porting it all out. So the inlet manifold's all been smoothed through. I don't know if anyone remembered the shape of these ports when I did them. They were pretty horrible, and he's made it all very nice. So very sexy. Can't wait to get that on and get it together. But yeah, I'm wittering on somewhat. Bit more fabrication to go, and I'll just have to figure it out as I go along, which I will. So I guess it just remains for me to say, like and subscribe, please. Got a couple of new subscribers really, which I'm quite amazed by, given how little content I put out. Very nice that people still look. But if you would comment, that would be very nice. I do like getting people's comments, especially when they're the completely unsolicited ones. Critical or not, I'm not really bothered. If you think something I'm doing is ridiculous, then please say so. If you like what I'm doing, say that as well. Whatever you fancy. So I'm just going to say my customary cheers, good health, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.